We were in the middle of a situation where diamonds were actually now treated as in the same boat as people that actually were selling the arms that the atrocities in Angola were happening with. The reason that I was brought into the picture is that as a gemologist they thought, well look, it's easy enough to identify gemstones, so it shouldn't be too difficult to identify the origins of diamonds. And once you have those origins of diamonds, you actually can say, well, if they are from Angola, they need to come with the right paper. If they come from somewhere else, you don't need paper whatsoever. Well, the reason I'm still not back at the Institute of Gemology, or it's called the Educational Department right now, is because of the fact that we don't yet have a system that allows us to identify origins of diamonds with that kind of accuracy that is needed for a court of law. I'll come back to that because 10 years later we are almost there, as a kind of an ironic statement, if you will. So why did we put the Kimberley process first? Well, first of all, the Kimberley process was named for a meeting that happened, and that was going to be quite a legendary meeting. It happened in May 2000, exactly 10 years ago, in the city of Kimberley in South Africa, the city where, first of all, diamonds had been identified in its primary rock in Kimberley. From the beginning, and that was basically the doing of the South African government at that time, we were a tripartite organization. From the very inception of the situation, we had governments, of course, that wanted to regulate something. We had then the industry that was there to be regulated or to defend ourselves in the beginning. And then we had the NGOs that were on the attacking side. I want to remember you maybe something that we lost over the 10 years in operation. We were not friendly people in the beginning of the Kimberley process. We were actually at each other's throats all the time. Right now it seems that we're all friends and that we're moving from one friendly meeting to another one. It was different in the beginning, I can assure you about that. Ellie has mentioned throughout the speech and throughout the video that you have seen, that in the beginning there were a lot of countries that were coming into the negotiations. They wanted to change something and then stepped away again. We had, for instance, Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso had been in the Kimberley process from the beginning until 2003, when they had to put negotiation into operation, and then they stepped away from the plate and they didn't come back. We had a number of countries like that, unfortunately, that made our situation not quite easy. Now, can you imagine that you are trying to draw an effective machine with 50 governments at the table? 50 governments that want to do something else, of course. And you're still trying to get an effective, efficient mechanism that is going to be working for all. This was basically one of the reasons that the Kimberley process kept me on as chair of the working group of diamond experts, and that's a very simple euphemism. It's basically at the beginning, when the 2003, when we started the operation of the Kimberley process, we needed to have a group of people that were trying to keep the trade going, because if we wouldn't have done that, the difficulties that were generated by the Kimberley process itself in the different countries would have stopped the trade completely. Right now we have about 75 countries. I say approximately. And the approximately mentioned very clearly because we get a few countries that come up and that fall off. Not because of the fact that they are not interested anymore, but if you would look, for instance, at our 2004 amount of countries, you would find that Romania and Bulgaria had been independent Kimberley participants on their own account. Since their accession to the European Union, they are not counted as individual participants anymore, of course. And that means clearly that the amount of participants may be less than it was in the beginning, but the amount of countries that are affected by it have been growing up. As has been mentioned, the Kimberley process is basically the first regulatory scheme that has been implemented and applied to the diamond industry. there is one very important thing that I would like to mention. Why wasn't this happening before, people said? Well, it wasn't the spirit of the time. Mind you, in 2000, if you take an economical magazine, the only thing that you would be reading would be about the WTO, Doha meetings, and about trade liberalization. What we have been doing in the Kimberley process is turning the clock back. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I leave that to the economists and to the specialized people at WTO, but it meant that the WTO had to give a waiver in order for the Kimberley process to be able to start operating. Now, we received that waiver on grounds of humanitarian reasons, and we have that waiver until December 2012. Theoretically speaking, if the waiver is not repeated, the Kimberley process could be dead and buried the 1st of January 2013. I don't think that this is a real possibility, but it's definitely something that keeps our heads in the right direction. Now, what did it do? Kimberley has been quoted as being a failure. If you read the recent Anglo-Saxon magazines and trade and newspapers, you will read about the fact that Kimberley has no feet and Kimberley has failed to do something about Zimbabwe. Well, I would like to ask you to read Tony Blair's memoirs. Tony Blair mentions that this is probably the only area where he wasn't able to do something about the regime in Zimbabwe. And he was even contemplating sending in troops. Now, he has contemplated that in other parts of the world, and we know the consequences. Eli Isakov has mentioned one very important thing. I think the Kimberley process, and that's not a small feat, the Kimberley process is the only international process that has brought Zimbabwe and the government of Zimbabwe to the table, and that have pushed them into a direction that they didn't want to go in first. But now we can say that if you're looking at what's happening on the ground in the mines that are operational today, these are first-class operations. I was in Zimbabwe 3 weeks ago, and I did witness what is happening there right now. There has been tremendous steps forward. There are still difficulties whatsoever. There are still a number of things that have to be solved. But the steps forward have been considerable. I think that is one of the great challenges that anyone that wants to change the Kimberley process, or even make it redundant, or replace it by something else, will have to come up with a system that is better. Now, it's very easy to say, well, you have to do this and kick them out. Well, kick them out is basically the lost strategy. This is what you should not do, because once you do that, you are basically not having any leverage anymore. I think what Kimberley has been doing is keep people engaged into the system. And I think engagement is basically also the reason why the United Nations have understood that this is a very important situation for all. Now, coming back to Sierra Leone, because this is the area where we started in the beginning, you should see something in exports. Sierra Leone only had exports for a number of $1.9 million in 1999. That's the official export. In 2004, they recorded $142 million of exports. That means this is government revenue that is not going to rebels, that is not going to fuel arms, that is going straight to the treasury. I would like to remind you also, this is a picture that is maybe not so well known, but we diamond analysts in the diamond industry, before 2003, before the Kimberley process started, we had the impression that the total value of the rough diamond business was about $8.4 billion on a yearly basis. After 1 year of statistics, KP statistics, in 2003, everybody was surprised to see that the total value in the Kimberley in the diamond business, in the rough diamond business, was not $8.3 billion, but 11.6. So this bringing to the surface of that amount of cash has been, I think, very instrumental in making the Millennium Goals come a little bit closer to us. And that's one of the Millennium Goals. We all read about the famous $1 a day situation that is the amount of money that is supposedly made by small-scale miners. This is, of course, completely unacceptable. And this is one of the reasons that we should not accept that countries that are diamond producers fall down at the bottom of the UN Development Index. Beyond the Kimberley process, well, what is there next? Well, the Kimberley process is basically, or the Kimberley process certification scheme, to be precise, is a government instrument. It's something that is put in national legislations. One thing that goes beyond, and way beyond that, is that the national legislation stops once your diamonds are transformed from rough diamonds to polished diamonds. The AWDC has an industry self-regulation through a system of warranties, which basically allows the consumer to find out whether diamonds actually have served their purpose or not. One of the things that is important, and that is a successor to what the Kimberley process set out to do in the first days, is what is called now the Diamond Development Initiative. This is where people really of the industry are looking, how can we support and how can we help small-scale diamond miners in different countries and help them by giving them models, by giving them assistance to get beyond the poverty reduction. And then CIBJO's creation of WGSF, of course, is one of the most important steps that have to be taken. And here now, 10 years later, on an organization that is a direct conclusion of WGSF, I think I'm very proud to be here. There will still be a lot of other initiatives needed before we can actually be proud and rest on our laurels. But I think for now, this is enough as an introduction on how the Kimberley process can actually serve as a model for other communities. Thank you very much.